So this is video 1.5 of the Learn to Knit Lefty style for the newborn beanie series. Yesterday's video we cast on our 52 stitches and joined them in the round. But today I'm going to put these aside because I want to show you a really good and solid tutorial on the knit stitch and the purl stitch. So I just pulled out some scrap yarn that I had lying around and some needles. I'm using my 8s on the hat, so I pulled out some 9s. Now when we go to do the ribbing tomorrow, I'm going to knit 2 stitches and purl 2 stitches. Knit, purl. And if you see these knit stitches, they look like little V's. And the purl stitches are just little bumps. So everybody hears knit. Oh, you're going to knit. Well, they hear purl and they're like, what the heck is that? Well, purling is the opposite of knitting. It's the exact opposite. And you'll see that more when I go through and explain how to do it. I'm also going to show you the 2 styles of knitting. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, there's knitting and there's purling and there's 2 styles, and okay, when it comes to style, it's just how you hold your yarn. And you just pick whichever one is comfortable for you. As a matter of fact, you can pick to morph the 2 if you want. It's just you do it however is most comfortable for you. I'm going to first show you English style, which is also called throwing. And then I'm going to show you continental style, which I think is a little bit easier for the person who's learning because it's less to think about. But I'm going to show you throwing first because it's how I started. So we're going to knit all the front stitches and purl all the back stitches so that you get a good view of how this works. Now I just cast on about 10 stitches. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be a little. You just put a couple on there so you can really practice. And it works well if you pick a smaller-ish number so that you're not overwhelming yourself with each row. So we're going to knit. The way you knit is you take your second needle and you're going to front to back through the front loop. With your stitch, this is the front loop. The loop that's facing you is the front loop. And the loop that's on the back side is the back loop. Makes sense. So you're going to go front to back through that loop, just like that. And you're going to take this yarn, you're going to throw it, which is why it's called throwing, under and over. And now you're going to pull that yarn that you just through the loop, and you're going to slide that stitch off the needle. Let's do that again. Front to back, throw under and over, through the loop, off the needle. Front to back, throw under, over, through the loop, off the needle. Front to back, under, over, through the loop, off the needle. Front to back, under, over, through the loop, and off the needle. Now, don't be ashamed to say this mantra to yourself out loud if you have to. You have to do what you have to do when you're learning. Okay? And if you're following along, you just knit your first row. Now, we are going to turn it. Now, wait a minute. We knit. Why are there little purl bumpies on there? Remember I said purls are the opposite of knits. So watch when we purl. Listen carefully to what I say. Purl stitch. Back to front, throw over, under, through the loop and off the needle. See how that's exactly opposite? Back to front, over, under, through the loop, off needle. Back to front, over, under, through the loop, and off the needle. Back to front, over, under, through the loop, and off. It's the exact opposite of knitting. And that's all purling is. It's not like we're doing something completely different. We're just doing the exact opposite on our needles. Okay, so we just purled our first row. You can see we purled and it's got all the little bumpies, just like we want. And then you turn it over and oh my goodness, look at that. There's 2 rows of V's there now. When you do knitting all on one side and purling all on the other, that creates the stocking knit stitch pattern. It's not a different stitch. I know it confuses people at first. They think, oh, there's knitting, there's purling, there's stocking knit, there's garter. No, there's knitting and there's purling. And how you put your knits and your purls together is what creates stocking knit stitch, which is here, where it's all these little V's together, or ribbing, where we have the different thing, the combination of knitting and purling, or garter stitch, where you have just all knitting, you knit every row. And so it's just how you can put the knit and the purl together. That's all stocking knit stitch is. That's all it is. Knitting really is pretty much just knitting and purling. And how you combine those stitches. Now, we're going to do continental style. Continental style is the one where you wrap the yarn. This is the traditional way you wrap the yarn for continental style. Now, I have 4 small children. Wrapping the yarn like this does not work for me. I need to be able to drop my project and run to kiss a boo-boo at the drop of a hat. So I do not wrap it around my hand like that. I just wrap it around my index finger because that's the most comfortable way for me to hold it. Again, when you're knitting, you just find the most comfortable style for you. But holding it like this, you will see how easy continental style is compared to throwing. You go front to back, grab the yarn through the loop, off the needle. There's no thinking about how am I supposed to wrap the yarn again? You don't need to think about that. You go front to back, you just grab that yarn and pull it through. You let the needles do the work in this style. You go front to back, grab the yarn and pull it through. Front to back, grab and 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 through. And now we just did a row in continental style. It really does, if you have arthritis or like tennis elbow or stuff like that, continental style is probably going to be the most comfortable for you because it is the least amount of movement. So now we're going to do the purl stitch continental style. So you're going to go back to front, grab the yarn, doesn't want to work for me, and pull it through. Front, back to front, grab the yarn, pull it through. Now I find personally that I need to move my index finger over towards the left just to make it taut enough so that the yarn gets pulled through that loop a little bit easier. I've seen people who don't need to do that. They're just really good at this, I guess. I don't know. I need to. It's more comfortable for me to do this. And it's front to back, grab that yarn and pull it through. Front to back, grab that yarn and pull it through. And now you have done your first row of purl stitch in continental style. Now, we talked about gauge in the last video. I'm going to talk about gauge again in this video because this is a perfect little gauge swatch. Remember we measured our gauge and we just find, let's see, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3 and a half. 3.5 stitches to the inch. Well, I want 4 stitches to the inch to make this hat. If I have 3.5 stitches to the inch, that means my stitches are too big. So my hat is going to be too big. It's going to be too big around. So this will not work to make this hat. So how do I fix it? So I can use this yarn to make this hat. Well, if you want to use this yarn and you have stitches that are too big, then you need to use a smaller needle. Now this is a size 9 needle, so it's a little bigger than my size 8s. So the stitches are big. So the way you fix that is you go down a needle size. So I'd probably try an 8, and if they're still too big, I'd go down to a 7. Now the same is true if you have too many stitches in your inch. Let's say I measured this and there were 5 stitches in my inch. Well, then my stitches are too small because I have so many in an inch. That means my stitches are too small. So I need to go up a needle size because I need to make my stitches bigger. So I would try, if it's 5 and I'm looking for 4, I'd go up 1 and go up 1. Now, if you're way off, if you need 4 stitches to the inch and you have 2, I would go up 2 needle sizes at a time and not just 1 because it would save you time. But if you feel more comfortable going up 1 at a time, that's fine too. Now, I know this is too big, so I'm going to actually, when you go to do a gauge swatch, if it's too big, you just, or too small actually, either way, if it's not the right size, you just take it off your needle and you just, it just rips right out like that. This is called frogging. So when you're pulling the work out, it's called frogging. You'll see that sometimes people talking about frogging. That's what frogging is. So because it's too big, I need to go find smaller needles and try again to get the right size for my hat. So in the next video I make, we will work the ribbing of our hat over here with this setup right here. So I suggest you take your yarn and you practice your knit stitches and your purl stitches. Practice both of them. If you're going to do knitting all on one side and purling all on the other, what you're going to find is that your work is going to naturally curl. It's when you do all knit stitches on one side and all purl on the back, your work curls up. That's good. Don't panic if it starts to roll in on itself and roll up against itself. That's good. That means you're doing it right. So, yeah, don't panic if you see that happening. That's actually a good sign. Which is why most hats you'll either see they have the rolled brim or they'll have a fancy edge or, you know, even just an edge like this. Because this edge keeps the hat from rolling up. And some people like the rolled look, so they leave it. Some people don't, so they add an edge. I mean, it just depends on personal choice. But get yourself acquainted with the knit stitch and the purl stitch, and then come back for video number 2, where we put the knit stitch next to the purl stitch and create this ribbed edge. Hopefully, I will see you tomorrow, and you'll have a little bit more confidence, so you'll feel comfortable doing the ribbed edging with me.